Hello and welcome. I am Sofiko and this is Creative Minds Speaking, a podcast where I have conversations with creative industry professionals, bringing into the spotlight those incredible people who are behind the scenes of art and entertainment is the main goal of this podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are the personal views of the guests only and do not represent in any way the views of their companies. This is an exploration of the guest journey and views only. On today's episode, I'm going to chat with Mia Van Allen. She's an executive assistant at Village Studios and also a founder of the Color of Music Collective, an organization that amplifies the voices of people of color and LGBTQ plus individuals working in the music industry. Not sure about other countries, but in the US, June is a Pride Month, and for those who work in the music industry, they also know that it's Black Music Month. So I'm super excited that we have Mia today on the show. Hi, Mia. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm super happy that you're here with us. And let's start. Can you please share a little bit about your background and how your journey in the music industry started?
Of course, happy to. So I kind of knew I wanted to work in the music industry from a very young age. I'm originally from Chicago, and Chicago is just a very music-centric city. So I grew up going to concerts and tiny little festivals and going to a lot of sports games, and a lot of my family friends from high school and in middle school happened to be involved somewhat in the entertainment industry. So I was very fortunate to have been exposed with behind the scenes. So, behind the scenes meaning tour management, production, and ticketing, and all of that sort of stuff that normal fan probably wouldn't even care less about. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, I was just always really fascinated with how an album release strategy happens. How does an artist pick the designs for the actual concert? So the staging, the lighting, I was always just very fascinated about that. So I kind of just became really obsessed with learning about the credits of each album. So all my favorite albums were definitely very rock centric because that's just kind of what I grew up listening to. My parents went to college in the 80s. So they grew up, or they didn't grow up, but yeah, they grew up listening to rock music, but they, for fun, they always just went to concerts. So they saw like some of my favorite bands like Nirvana, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, definitely like all my favorite bands. So of course, like when they raised me, they were kind of obsessed with the idea of our child has to know everything about music history. So um, I didn't know that you could actually make this a job until I started looking at colleges, because when I was going on tours of colleges, I saw, especially because I've only wanted to go to a college in a city, because being from Chicago, I feel like I need to be around, like, public transportation, and I need to have access to museums and just a bunch of cool stuff to do indoors and outdoors. And I feel like at a lot of southern schools, I wouldn't have that luxury. So it kind of just like weeded out a bunch of colleges for me because I knew I
Mm-hmm.
needed a city. So when I was going to all these colleges and touring in person and all that, um, a lot of tour guides would talk about the business school and how they had a music industry program. And after I learned a little bit more about what exactly that meant, I became so infatuated with pursuing that as a career, because I love music. I love music history, love going to concerts. It just seemed like an end all be all situation for me. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't see myself doing anything else. So I went to American University in DC, which that's where I ended up, and I absolutely loved it. They have a really great music business program there, And with that program, even though it was focused on music, I still was exposed to how music is still involved in the film industry. So, song placement, licensing sync, copywriting through entertainment law to music politics, which is artist advocacy focused. So, making sure
Mm-hmm.
that artists are getting a proper revenue for the songs that their fans are streaming on different streaming platforms. So Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, I'm sure everyone's like pretty familiar with that. So I was really exposed to all aspects of the music industry in college, and I interned like a lot. My school is obsessed with experience and internships and um, just basically building your resume. So I made sure that
Mm-hmm.
I interned every single semester, sometimes even more. And that's kind of how I made my connections and got my job where I am today at the Village. I got that job because my professor like knows the CEO, and like the music industry may seem really big, but it's really quite small,
Mm-hmm.
especially for a lot of the older people in the music industry. Everyone knows each other. So yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of just a short Spark
Love
Notes
it.
version.
Yeah. So for how long you've been at this current role, and what are your responsibilities there?
So I've been at the Village for a year now,
Mm-hmm.
and gosh, I think just the whole year went by so fast. And um, for the CEO, who's my like direct correspondent at the Village, I pretty much do everything related to the daily tasks of running a studio. So, whether that be assisting the studio manager with booking the clients, mostly in charge of confirming all the clients, especially with COVID right now. There's just a lot of extra paperwork that needs to be done. So, of course, that gets all falling under my desk. So, that's like the COVID wellness forms. And because we have multiple studios, it's not just one studio, it's like over 10 studios in one building.
Mm-hmm.
We have certain policies and guidelines that people have to follow because of COVID. Most people in the past, let's say, like if Kanye West was recording at the studio, he would bring, his wife, probably his kids, his manager, songwriter, producer. That's like 7 people. We
Mm-hmm.
can't do that right now because of COVID. So I'm kind of in charge of making sure that the guest list is limited to 2 people max. And yeah, and then also just like the daily stuff that my boss has to do. So the CEO, he is on the Grammy board, so can't really because I signed like a bunch of NDAs. I can't really speak much to what he does, but he
Mm-hmm.
helps a lot with artist development. So helping indie artists, and he's also on the Grammy board, which means that he is an integral role for artists who get nominated. He and the board votes on that. So that's been really cool to see. But yeah, I kind of just do a bunch of stuff. I kind of do everything. It really depends on the day.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. But it's very cool that you're doing it. Sounds like in the studio you meet a lot of cool people. Do you want to share some stories with us?
Yeah, sure. So I can't really speak much about the current clients who are in. Again, NDAs, that's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
music industry stuff. It's so annoying. But in the past, I've been able to work with two of my favorite bands of all time, The Stroke
Oh
and
my God.
the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And both, I have to say, because sometimes I find with a lot of celebrities, not just music, that they come across as very sincere and humble, but in real life, you kind of, as a fan, can be disappointed sometimes. And I have to say, like, I've never had that experience. I feel like all the people that come in, all the artists are so humble and really sincere, and they really want to do everything they can to give back to the community, especially with COVID. And I think them just supporting us by choosing us as a studio is a good sign, and it goes along a long way. I mean, our artists right now, they don't need to go to a studio. Everyone can do this from home, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that, like, those 2 bands have definitely, like, been the best for me because I love alternative music, that's my favorite. So, when they walked in, I was like, everyone has that one artist or, like, celebrity that they will completely fangirl about, and those 2 are mine. I have to say, though, I'm obsessed with Dave Grohl, and I would say like, I know everything about him, like, I'm that person, and I have already told my boss, if he comes in, to call an ambulance because I will pass out. I'm not even kidding. The day has yet to come, but I have a feeling that now that a lot of live stream concerts have been announced for the summer, and even for the Foo Fighters, they're going back on tour for the summer. I have a feeling that we will cross paths sooner or later. So I am going to pass out. I know for a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
he's like beyond humble of a human being, but for me, I don't care. Because he's like the literal reason why I got into the music industry, from watching his career just over time
Mm-hmm.
explode. So if I see him, I will pass out without question.
So once you see him, once you meet him, we will need to record another episode of the podcast
Thank you.
so you share the experience.
If I can remember.
Oh, you're funny. So now let's concentrate on Color of Music Collective. Can you please share how the idea of starting this company came into your mind? What pushed you to start this company? And how exactly your company supports people of color and LGBTQ individuals?
It's a complicated story.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think I mentioned this earlier, I interned a lot in college, and it was really important for me to get as much experience as possible when I'm young and make as many connections so that when I graduated college, I would have clear access to those goals that I really wanted to achieve in post grad. And for me, as a Black woman, I felt kind of cheated by the system. I was never really well informed in my classes in college or even by some of my close mentors in the music industry that the music industry for a long time has really been like struggling with inclusion. And by inclusion, I mean all walks of life. So, sexuality, gender, race, religion, everything. Just because, if you think about it, when the music industry got started, way back in the early 1920s, when it actually became a sustainable source of living and an actual business, in the 1920s, African Americans were seen as outliers. They weren't seen as creative individuals. They were seen as only purely workers, nothing more than that, even though they were very talented. So a lot of that is still rooted in the music industry today through employment. So right now we have a lot of Black POCs, BIPOC individuals who are maybe, let's say, 35 years old, and they started working at a label or an agency at the age of 21, 22, and they still have the same position that they started at, and they have not gotten promoted, and it's been like 10 years. And that's crazy because from the stories that I've heard from being on panels and just having lots of phone calls with BIPOCs in the music industry, they've been watching other people who haven't been at that company as long as they have, or haven't landed as much clients as they have, still get promoted. So there's still a lot of racism at the backbone of the music industry, and it's only just now, I would say, in the past year, really been taken to light. So as a Black woman, I always was the only person of color in all my internships, sometimes the only woman. And I really struggled with imposter syndrome. And for those who don't know what imposter syndrome is, I actually wrote a whole blog post about it on COMC's website, so definitely check that out. I go into a lot of detail there, but for a quick little dictionary.com summary, I define imposter syndrome as feeling as if you don't belong in a certain place, which I find for most people, it's typically at a place of work because you aren't seeing someone who looks like you, someone you can relate to. You don't feel deserving of that particular job or even being a student or a teacher, anything like that, because you aren't seeing that representation. You feel like there are certain stigmas against you that prevent you from feeling that source of fulfillment. So for me, that was simply not seeing more BIPOC representation at my jobs. And that's how I met my co founder, Carla. I met her at one of my internships, and it was pretty late into my career working in the music industry, and we just really connected because she's a first generation college student and also an out and proud queer woman in the music industry. So we just really connected because we were both seen as outliers. And I, for a while, wanted to start something like COMC, but because I was a student and also so busy with work, I didn't have the time. And it's something, whenever I want to start something of my own, I like to put 110% into it. So I really wanted to wait till it was the perfect time. And with COVID and everyone being from home, I thought, why not start it now? So, um, yeah, we launched now officially a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just been an incredible ride. We've had tremendous success for a company as young as us, and I'm just so excited to see, especially with Pride, what happens.
Yeah, you're doing amazing. I saw some of the panels that you had, and you had some very cool people. Um, so, can you please explain us more what exactly Color Music Collective does?
Yeah, so our main mission is to amplify POC and LGBTQ voices in the music industry. I get a lot of questions about if we focus on musicians, bands, or artists, and we do love supporting BIPOC LGBTQ artists, but our main focus is amplifying music executives who are queer identifying or POCs. So that's kind of our primary focus. So with that, obviously, I think you mentioned our networking panels that we host on a bi-weekly basis, and we cover topics differentiating from A&R, streaming, Black mentorship in the music industry. We did one in partnership with Def Jam for Black History Month, which was super exciting. And yeah, honestly, anything related to the music business, we've pretty much covered. So, definitely follow us on all of our social media. We're about to launch something um, today for Pride, for an event that we're doing tomorrow. We're already come off super strong for Pride Month.
So excited for you.
Yeah, we just have a lot going on. We have a mentorship program for the summer that's going to start in a few weeks in June.
Mm-hmm.
And the mentorship program is super unique to CUMC because there's so many nonprofits in music that have mentorship programs, but ours is specifically rooted to matching POCs or LGBTQ mentees of the volunteer program to a match of someone that they closely identify with. Because, as I mentioned before, I wish I had something like that when I started
Mm-hmm.
my career in the music industry. So that's something that's very unique to CUMC that I love that we're doing. And we're going to be having, like, we've had two live stream concerts. We're going to have another for Pride, and we have the blog that I mentioned a little bit about, and Clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, honestly, everything. We have a series called Pass the Mic as well. Hint, hint. That's going to be something we're doing tomorrow. About that basically has POCs, or in this case for Pride, a queer identifying folk, to talk a little bit about their experience in the music industry and how they got their career started. And people can ask advice, which is super cool because they just take over our stories for a
Mm-hmm.
whole day, and they get to answer people's questions who submit. So, yeah, that's kind of just a general sense of what COMC does. We do a lot.
Yeah, you do a lot, so many cool projects. You mentioned that you have internship program, and when I was checking your website, I saw that the internship programs are paid. And it's amazing because there are a lot of unpaid internships in the music business. Do you want to tell something about it?
Yeah, so I really like to focus on highlighting companies that not only are BIPOC or queer identifying, but giving access to paid internships is something that you think would just be a basic necessity, but it
Mm-hmm.
really isn't. I don't understand why labels and music companies find it so difficult to pay their interns, and I often get a lot of internships sent to me to pass on to our followers, and I refuse to do a lot of them because they aren't paid and they're against my own morals. So I really like to work with companies to come up with some sort of source of payment, even if it's not actual money, a guaranteed job after,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So, yeah, our mentorship program isn't paid just because a mentorship is kind of like a friendship. And
Mm-hmm.
I find if money is involved, you kind of lose that strong sense of a close mentor. And most mentorship programs are not paid just because you are just creating a relationship from nothing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I find, especially with the music business involved, if there's any source of payment, it's honestly not a good way to kick off a relationship if there's going to be politics involved. So our mentorship program,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, is not paid. I don't think I haven't come across any mentorship programs that are paid, but yes, we do amplify other internships that do pay their interns.
That's incredible. That's incredible, really. Um, what challenges did you face when you just started your company that you weren't initially expecting?
Mm. I probably would say we haven't really had a lot of challenges because we were lucky enough to start on a virtual platform. So there's a lot of leniency we could do. The most common problem that I've noticed is we have trouble finding panelists who are out and proud queer folks in the music industry. As a
Mm-hmm.
straight woman, I can't really speak much about it. I just find it's not my place. But I find that the music industry, especially in the South, is not as accepting for queer folks. But we're actually going to be having a panel talking literally about this,
Mm-hmm.
with my co-founder and executive director, who are both queer identifying women who can freely talk about this. So I would highly recommend following us to learn about the dates and who's attending. But it's going to be super cool. And I feel like this conversation is definitely way overdue. So
Definitely. So, how many people are working on in the organization right now? Is it a big team?
We have a team. So the board has about 8 members. So the board
Okay.
consists of our marketing manager, social media, our executive director, the co-founder, me, public relations manager, production and tech, and writing. So pretty much every element of CUMC, they have a executive director for that specific program. But outside of that, We have a volunteer team of around 50 people. So it's quite, yeah,
That's a
it's
big
really
team.
quite large. Yes, yeah.
Wow. And is it challenging to put together the panel with busy people who are working? How do you manage to find this one time, one slot that works for everyone?
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially because all of us on the board have full-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I see COMC as a second job, honestly, but it's something it brings me just so much joy at the end of the week. And I just have always loved giving back to my community. So
Mm-hmm.
I love it. It's honestly more of a passion project. But for our panels, you do have to be very, because you're running your own business as well, just as much as they have a busy schedule. You probably I like to think of myself as busier because I have two jobs basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be very adamant about this is the time, this is the day. If it doesn't work, we will consider you for the next panel.
Okay.
And that's it. It's very rare that we drift from our scheduled day and time because we really like to keep it a bi-weekly basis. And since we have an international audience, we have people from all over the globe. This is the time that really works best for everybody. So that's something I always have to say because a lot of people who I reach out to, they don't know how big CUMC's audience is. So once I hint towards that, I find it works out.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, what advice would you give to Mia who is just starting in the music industry?
Ooh, good question. I would probably say to turn down internships that you don't necessarily feel will benefit you or make you feel like you have a place. I find when I was really young, just getting my career started, I just applied to a job because of the name and what it stood for, and I didn't care much about the company culture. And now that's like all I care about.
Mm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
whenever I'm talking to like panelists, my mind automatically goes to what the culture's like, how are the coworkers. I find I that's my most given advice to our staff when they're applying to jobs is asking those questions. Is what's the work life balance like? So yeah, that's something I wish I told myself.
That's a very good advice. Thank you. Um, what would you say are your life highlights?
Probably traveling abroad in college was definitely the highlight of probably adulthood for me because I'm such a homebody person. I love being around my family and my dogs and just being close to home. So studying abroad was a really big deal for me, even though I have traveled abroad with my family multiple times. Being alone, I find, was totally different and really scary, but I knew it's something I really need to do to grow. And I came out so independent, and I felt like I could really do everything because I was traveling in different countries that no one spoke English, and I survived, and I was able to navigate public transportation in French by myself.
Wow.
And uh like check I was able to get myself to the airport. That was a miracle in itself. But but I did it, and I got exposed to so many beautiful cultures in Europe. So that probably was my all-time highlight because I was able to bounce around on a given weekend and just go to a new city, go to a new
Mm-hmm.
country easily. And then moving here to LA from the East Coast has also been a very surreal experience because I've essentially kind of had to like start from scratch. Like even though I've been to LA before, I have to like find new friends and pay my rent and I have a car now, so I'm learning everything about how cars work. There's a lot of car stuff and maintenance that you have to do as an adult, and pretty much just like navigating everything on my own on the different coast has been challenging, but you know, you have to do it with age. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what is your definition of success?
I actually listened to another podcast about this. Someone asked the same thing. And for a lot of people, I find success is proven through how much money you earn, or that promotion at your job, or that dream company that you finally get to. I find a lot of people focus on their career when it comes to success, but I find that is great, but I have to think that there's a balance between your career success and also when it comes to your personal life, your personal self, and your growth with that. So for me, I think success would be to find that work life balance because I'm still really struggling with that, and
Mm-hmm.
also really finding that positive self identity and feeling security about yourself. I find before now I really focused on job security and getting the best company on that resume. And I thought that was what success meant. But I think success is just feeling really fulfilled with your life and the people that you have in it. So
Mm-hmm.
that for me is what success is.
Love it. Love it. Balance is always very important. So I love this definition.
Mhm.
Do you have any book, movie, and song recommendations to our listeners?
Ooh. I actually just bought a bunch of new books. I just started reading Tegan and Sarah's autobiography, which is so good. That book, I'm like literally like only on the first chapter. I literally started it last night. But that book is just super well written if you're interested in not just Tegan and Sarah, but like how a queer artists find a place in music for them and getting their career started. I think it's a really motivating story to hear. Oh, I actually finished a book called I'm Still Here. Author, I think it's like Austin Channing Brown. I think it's actually like her first book,
Mm-hmm.
and um, I'm on the Reese Witherspoon book club, so that's pretty much every book on that list is a book that I've read. So I highly would recommend that. She chooses amazing books, but that book is mostly about it's like a memoir of a black woman who has really tackled a lot of issues that get overlooked by white folk, just like white ordinary straight identifying people, and she just conveys the struggles of a black woman so beautifully. It's very well written, and I think a lot of people talk about that book as being a book for white allies, but I think for me as a black woman it was so gratifying to hear that I wasn't alone. So
Mm-hmm.
I always recommend it to my PSU friends. It's just so beautifully written. Yeah, I think those are my top two books. And if you like mysteries, I think they're actually making a movie out of it, but a woman, the woman in the window, oh, so good. It's kind of hard to explain without giving it away, but it's like a suspense thriller novel, which I normally hate, but this was like so beautifully written. So everything they said is true.
Thank you. And how about movie and song?
That's hard. I think my favorite movie, the movie that I often rewatch, would be Silver Linings Playbook. For me, it's really taught me a lot about putting your mental health first and finding people who will go above and beyond for you and stuff like that. And that people, no matter how old you are, can struggle with mental health. That's kind of like what that book taught me. And, or not book, well, it's a book and a movie. I've read both, but the movie I think is a lot better. I love Jennifer Lawrence. So that's why. And Robert De Niro, the two of them together.
That's very rare when people say that they like movie more.
I know, right? But that's how good it is. And I think it got like a bunch of awards as well. So, um, but yeah, that's for the movie. And I guess choosing a song is very hard. I've never been able to do it, but
But maybe something you just want to recommend to everyone to listen to.
I mean, Grace Potter is probably definitely one of my top 5 favorite artists of all time, and any song she does, like, I love. There isn't a song of hers that I've heard that I don't listen to, so
Mm-hmm.
anything she produces, check it out.
Okay, thank you. Who is your celebrity crush?
Ew, that's really hard because I've, like, never been that person. Love to, like, have, like, a celebrity crush. Hmm. I guess it would have to be, Tom Hardy because I just love everything. I love everything that he's in. I think he's a phenomenal actor. He's also just a really great, like, community activist as well, which you wouldn't think of because you just think,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh my god, this man is, like, pure muscle and that's it."
Great. Now, what is the most useless talent that you have?
Useless?
Yeah.
Oh god. There's so many. I mean, I guess it would probably be my obsessive cleaning skills. I like, let's say if I clean my room, my whole room, like the day before, I'll do it again the next day. Like, but for me, like, really struggle with anxiety. So a way for me to cope with it is cleanliness.
Uh-huh.
But I'm like, people walk into my room and they're like, wow, you're like so clean. I'm like, yeah. And I'm not afraid.
Love it. I love it. And the last question that I like to wrap up the conversation with is, who inspires you the most?
Probably my mom, honestly, because she really gave up everything to be the best full-time mom out there. And, now that my sister and I are a lot older now, she has done so much for the community with a lot of the resources that my sister and I had, which was education primarily. We had both really great schools that we went to, and my mom is on the board of so many nonprofits and um, really goes out of her way to make sure that the community is better for young people like us in the US and abroad as well. So my mom is definitely like inspiring me to start something like COMC. And I've always, like, even before COMC, like, I always actively volunteered at different nonprofits and volunteer programs. And a lot of people don't really go out of their way to do that, I find. So,
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, "Oh, I'm so busy, I'll just donate this how much money a month." And I think that's great, but I feel like seeing what you are donating for is something that could really wake a person up. So that's something I always like to encourage people to do. Like, if you are doing nothing on a weekend, like this weekend, I literally had nothing planned. I literally just volunteered um, for different nonprofits in
Mm-hmm.
LA. So that I knew at the end of the day, I felt like I made a few steps forward into bettering the communities of LA. But yeah, that's something. That's my
That's
mom.
beautiful. That's
Hmm.
beautiful. Mia, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so happy we got to meet each other. This is incredible that you're working a full-time job and you're also working on your own project, on your own organization, and everything the organization does is really incredible. Wishing you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so lovely meeting you as well.